can you find the Sony Bravia 9? Like, objectively speaking, we're just looking at two images side by side. Which one is the Sony and which one is the TCL QM851G? You see, the more I do this comparison, the more I look at it and I'm like, there's something seriously really special about what TCL did this year. The sharpness, the clarity, the color quality, all of it is literally on par with a $3,000 television. Now, this kind of is where I draw the line in the sand and go, Sony A is charging too much money. B, it's already been proven that you can get literally the same exact result for like less money. And by less money, I mean $2,000 less. And in a lot of cases, it gets better on the TCL than what we have on the Sony. I mean, just look at all the contrast coming off of the TCL. If I told you the TV to the left was a Sony TV, you'd probably believe me because look at the TV to the right. They are near identical twins in this example. Yes, they will trade back and forth depending on some things, but people try to pretend like Sony's processing is so vastly superior in every single way and every single example and anything you could ever put up on the TV that TCL, a Chinese company, a budget brand, could never compete. Well, here you see the now $999 on sale, 65-inch TCL QM8, also known as the QM851G. New for 2024, doing its damn thing, taking on the Bravia 9. And I've got to say, I think it's doing a damn good job. Now, the Bravia 9 definitely has way better small highlights. So small highlights definitely bounce and reflect around like this water. Just looks absolutely insane on the Bravia 9. That's fantastic. But then when I look over at what TCL is doing, is it really so bad to the point where I would need to fork out $2,000 additional dollars to get what Sony is doing? I mean, I grant you it is impressive, but is it $2,000 impressive? No. Hell no. It's not. And yeah, sure, the Bravia 9 will eventually go down in price. Everything in life does, right? Eventually, it will get discontinued. But I can just say this with all certainty. The color quality coming off of the TCL, the depth, the immersion, everything, it's just on point. I mean, let's look at the text quality comparatively to Sony as well. See, as we zoom in, you have TCL with more vibrant image quality. It's just vibrant. I mean, that's the only way I could describe the TCL. It's a vibrant TV with an awful lot to offer. And you can kind of see it here as we kind of approach this little warp gate thing to get us out of this little vault here in Borderlands 3. I mean, it's like this is where gaming becomes a treat, right? Because for the longest time, us gamers have always been after the best picture quality. And I can tell you for a fact, it doesn't cost $3,000. And TCL they've really made me proud this year. I won't lie, like being a television reviewer, I have such pride in being able to say TCL offers TVs that are big for reasonable prices. Because, right, they're not cheap, but it's reasonable, right? Now, Sony will have the depth department down. This example will show that. You can clearly see there's darker shadows, which leads to better contrast and more depth. And it looks great. However, does it look $2,000 great? That's a whole other question because as I'm looking at my TCL's throwing those blows, and I mean freaking hard, to the point where it's like, I'm good on Sony. Like, I really don't feel like I need a Sony, where before you probably have to go Sony to get this experience. Now it's like, nope, I can get this experience for $1,000. Now, I'm going to go and show you again more of the world of this game. And I'm going to try my best so you can see again multiple types of examples here. I don't want this one to drag on for too long, but pay attention to like the highlights coming off of the TCL. There are examples like now where it just surpasses anything that the Sony Bravia 9 is capable of doing. The Sony Bravia 9 is doing a great job with small bright highlights, but globally, when TCL is kind of pushed into a corner, it throws some of the most impressive highlights I think I've ever seen in my entire life. And the black levels are to die for. They look amazing. Looking at this example, Both look very identical. Sony does have the edge in depth. We've talked about that. But really that comes from anytime there's something that's dark or in a shadow, Sony makes it black. And so that adds to contrast and depth that it just isn't possible on the other TV. And you're clearly seeing it here. Now, when I say it isn't possible, I mean that from the perspective of if you want your TV to be usable. There is a way to do it, but you will crush out your image a bit, and I'll show you that now. So in the brightness tab on the TCL QM851G, you go to black stretch and you turn that on. But black stretch only works if dynamic contrast is also on. So once you turn that on, as you can clearly see, it will crush out your information quite a bit. You can turn it off and just have dynamic contrast on low. I think that would probably be the smartest way to do it. And then what I would do is press and hold my game bar, open that up and go into shadow enhancer. And what I would do from there is kind of go off into like a corner of some sort where I know it's going to be really dark. Like look at these pipes, right? Like they're barely visible on the TCL, where on the Sony, they're much more visible. So I'm going to go and I'm going to just bump it up levels until I see what I see on the Sony. But to do that, you're at like level 5, really, before you start seeing a lot of that detail come back in your darkest corners. You don't want to be at 0 where you start off because you can't see shit. I mean, maybe you can get away with level 2, but you get the idea. Like you have to now start opening up your shadow detail, and Sony does not have to do that. This puts you at a bit of a disadvantage when we talk about picture quality, because effectively, anytime you're opening up your shadow detail, you're losing contrast of, again, how white would appear on a black background. And it just isn't ideal. Now, again, don't get me wrong. You can achieve something beautiful like here. Again, I just showed you in real time. It is possible. And now you have a lot of the depth that Sony has. Again, color quality is still going to be there for Sony with certain colors. Green may be debatable. We might be able to do something with that. Again, but just looking at what we have so far, I mean, you get the idea, right? Like there's a clear difference in the amount of depth and all that stuff that you get. But there's always a trade-off too, in that everything else just got brighter. And again, some things will look good, some things might not look so good. And we'll look at this as an example here. Look at Marcus Munitions here. You can clearly see his face and everything like that on the Sony. It's got really nice, rich, dark contrast. And it becomes a balancing act game at this point on the TCL to try to alleviate what you just did with opening up your shadow detail. So then it's like, oh crap, I've lost my contrast, essentially my darks. So now I have to go back in and I have to lower the shadow detail down, and then off looks good, but you don't have any real detail. So you have to leave it at least 1. And then therein lies the problem. So I think that is, again, a point against TCL, because there should be a way where you don't crush out your blacks. Don't get me wrong, looking down this hallway, I mean, after the adjustment like that, it's far more immersive on the TCL. Black levels draw you in more because the highlights are just better, and it genuinely just looks better. I mean, we are looking at Moxies here now, and we have a lot of the highlights that we would love on HDR. It looks beautiful, great color, right? We look here at the fire. It looks amazing, but ultimately Sony is going to take the cake for this once you start opening up your shadows. You don't want to do that on the TCL because that's where you lose a lot of your impact, you know? And you go here and you look at the color quality. I mean, there's no doubt TCL is rocking it with the colors, okay? But I think there's other conversational pieces to be had too. I mean, it's impressive to me that a TV that's $1,000 can do this. Let's just throw that out there, right? Sony put a price tag on this level of picture quality, and they said it was $3,000. And here comes TCL right behind them saying, basically, hold my beer, and showing you the vast majority of what Sony is offering for literally thousands less. I mean, like, to say that TCL actually nailed pricing this year is an understatement. I mean, look at these reds comparatively to what Sony is doing. Sony is known as like lens to living room and master of color, but their colors have fallen so far behind what TCL is doing. I mean, look at that. I mean, look at that. It could not be more clear that this year Sony just missed the mark as far as the colors. Contrast, they've got it. I mean, Hell, look at this over here. This is so sharp and so clear, and it looks great in three-dimensional. But I think without color that you'd see in the natural world, the real world, I mean, it's a video game, right? So it's not the real world, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it would fall apart relatively quickly as far as like from an immersion factor, but I'm not feeling like a falling apart of immersion on TCL. Granted, it's not like where we just had it, right? There is, like I told you, there's ways that you can get more depth out of the TCL, and that's kind of where I'm gonna go next. It's like TCL has so much potential and so much room for creative calibration and growth that it becomes tricky because you really, I mean, there's not enough time in the day to try to like find all the different kinds of adjustments you could do. And it has more potential and it's cheaper. Don't get me wrong. Look at the contrast on that Sony right now. Sony looks amazing. It does. It's got the brighter highlight for sure. It's definitely looking like a little superstar over there in this example. But they do trade back and forth entirely way too much for my comfort, given the price points, because when I pay $3,000, I want it to be very clear that a $3,000 TV just walked into the room. And when I look at examples like this, for example, I don't see it as like dominantly as I should. Like the TCL in an example like this should not have more depth than what the Sony has. Because as you're seeing in this example, look at the pipes. The pipes have just this three-dimensional draw to them on the TCL that the Sony is not producing. Now the Sony is counteractively, if you look at the highlight back here, producing that highlight beautifully where the TCL is not. So Sony is picking and choosing where they put the highlights. They are intelligently placing them to a degree. Nowhere close to what you get on an OLED, but comparatively to any other mini LED, you've got to give Sony at least that much, that the highlights are on point, right? And when the highlights are on point, the rest of the picture tends to typically fall in line, but not always. But again, it's just the fact that the TCL is coming this freaking close. I mean, look at my, look at my, we can't say it on YouTube, but you know what I mean? Look at my character's little firearm there. Okay, his little pew-pew, right? Let's go PG so they don't say, oh, he said a word. You know, I mean, just look at it. It looks incredible. Just, you know what I mean? Like $3,000 TV to the right, $1,000 TV to the left. I mean, shouldn't be happening. It baffles the mind and it leaves you scratching your head like, okay, well, what happened there? Because 1 minute Sony is like being touted around as king of everything, and then the next you've got this budget brand that everybody wrote off as just Chinese, you know, cheap products. Nobody should buy it as like, you know, being a competitor, a rival. And more than a rival, it's surpassing Sony. Look at this example right here. Now, mind you, a second ago, I was in a different type of setting and setup. And on literally in real time, I showed you can get more out of your TCL than even what I was just showing you a second ago. In real time, you've watched the TV transform beyond its limitations, which, again, you do have to sacrifice some shadow detail in some instances. Again, it's not perfect, and I'll show you that. I'll go over to the darkest portion of the room here, as close as I can get to it. Look at those curtains. If you look at the top left-hand corner of the curtains, they're darker on TCL than Sony. Sony has more shadow detail. That's going to come out a lot better for you in the end when you start looking at, again, a wide range of stuff, because that extra shadow detail is helpful, but in some instances it can also be downright destructive. So it really does become anyone's ball game with that. As far as color though, all day, every day I'm rocking with the TCL and how they rendered it, because I look at the Sony and I'm like, okay, that's nice. I look at the TCL and I go, damn, wow, look at that. Oh, the pop is unreal. And I think that's like, when you buy an HDR TV, to say that you buy it for pop is kind of like an understatement. Like the whole point of HDR is about wide color gamut. And if you don't get that out the rip, there's something wrong, like something fundamentally wrong. Now, I won't harp on it too much, but I just wanted to show you at least this part of it. I mean, look at Lilith here, and you tell me which TV looks better to you. TCL to the left, Sony to the right. And we're going to go into another gaming example, one of my favorites, Tiny Tina's Wonderland. So here we are in Tiny Tina's Wonderland, and this is where shadow detail on the Sony becomes a bit more of a problem. Because they have really open shadows, it also makes things look pale. Look at the grass here. Notice how by comparison, there's just not the depth that you would hope to have or even want to have, and it just doesn't look great. So we're gonna trigger this encounter here, and you'll probably see a lot of that in the landscape too. But essentially, when you look at the picture quality, it's inconsistent is the only thing I could say about the Bravia 9. There are moments where it's like really, really good, and then others where you're wondering how they got it so wrong. So diving into this firefight, we're just gonna get started, right? And you probably can notice a few things. The one thing that is apparent immediately is how vibrant the TCL is. And I mean like scary vibrant in some instances. Now it's not as vibrant as something like, let's say, the Samsung line of televisions with QD-OLED, or even Sony QD-OLED. It's not going to be on that level. But I think as far as like any mini LED you probably would ever see, this is going to be up there with the absolute best of the best for a very long time. Because to do this level of black control in a nighttime environment, giving you these types of highlights, and then giving you the color behind it, I think that's impressive. Now looking over at the Sony has immaculate detail as well though. Both look incredible in their own right with certain content pieces. And I think it's just the inconsistency really of the Bravia 9 that's doing it in right now. Because if it was a little bit more consistent, we would have way more to talk about than what we have on it. Because essentially all it really is like, hey guys, it's a good TV, but it's too much money. I mean, that's really the comparison, right? You can, copy and paste that and plaster it everywhere, because that's really the message you need to know. Don't get me wrong, those tiny highlights like now on this little crystal portal type deal looks amazing on the Bravia 9. And then also the way that the highlights tighten around the weapon, it looks really lovely. It does. It's nice, tight, clean, all that good stuff. But is TCL really so far behind, guys? I mean, like hypothetically speaking, like as you watch me go scene to scene, is TCL really that far behind? Are they $2,000 behind? I don't know that I could really say that like to like that they are $2,000 behind, because when I look at both comparatively as to what they offer and what they don't offer, I'm not seeing a $2,000 difference. And that's what you're really kind of wagering here when you put your money on the line, basically. And you're making a bet between one or the other, and then you've got like this sea of reviewers that you have to pick through, and it's not great, because 9 times out of 10 the message is usually going to be just buy the Sony Bravia 9 just because it's a Sony. But again, looking at the grass and the detail in the grass, you can kind of see like even landscape wise, now it's falling behind TCL. Look at this. Look at the contrast. Look at that. We did nothing to the TV to make it worse. But in this example, it's falling behind, and it's not because it's a brighter TV. Both TVs are capable of well over 3,000 nits. So it really comes down to a processing decision, where TCL now is deciding, okay, we're going to focus on this. I mean, look at the detail in this example, right? You can clearly see how in this example, there's a lot more color coming out of the little gate here, and even all around the highlights, they appear more naturally and more realistic like they would in the world, right? Like if I have a really bright sunny day, I'm going to have a lot of shadows because there's a lot of harsh lighting, not smooth gradated lighting and everything cinematic looking. And that's Sony's downfall. They try to wrap everything in a cinematic filter even when it doesn't apply, and it kind of hurts them in a lot of ways. And I feel like if they would only pull their heads out of their own asses and realize that there's more to TV than being cinematic 24/7, then they would actually walk away with a lot more happy customers. Don't get me wrong, there's no shortage of happy Sony customers, right? But I think it could be even better if they would just take the time, right, to do what was best for consumers versus, I don't know, ignoring the fact that they need to grow. Even if it's a little bit to some people, growth is necessary. You look at the most perfect thing in the room, and I guarantee you it still has room to improve. But Sony goes with the notion, we're already perfect, we don't have to do anything. And so TVs from Sony feel a lot more stagnant than they've ever felt. And I really feel like this is due to a lot of the mindset that we hear around Sony TVs as well. Again, everything is awesome, everything is perfect, yada yada. But again, you're seeing it in real time. I mean, look at the differences here. You try to find the $3,000 television in this example. It'd be very hard pressed to do so, because it's like, where do you see the extra money? That I don't know.